welcome to Detroit Black and White, our Wednesday edition. I'm Adolph Mongo. I'm surrounded by Allan Lengel from Deadline Detroit. How you doing, Allan?
I'm good.
Good evening. Jim Nardone. Jim, as a young boy, used to follow Jerry Garcia. You know, he was a Grateful Dead. He was. I can see you doing that though, man.
That's not my band. I might get an opportunity to bring my band into conversation tonight.
Yeah, but I can see you chasing the band. You know what? Let's start off. I got online and they said Sly Stone, Sylvester, died. I'm like, maybe it's bullshit because you know what? I remember a couple years ago, I thought he was dead then. You know, he was a recluse. He was way ahead of his time. I read something where one of his daughters said, damn, we should be, you know, he in his old age, he should be making money off in his songs, commercials. But of course, he didn't own the rights to his music. He won a lawsuit several years ago, $5 million, but the money went to somebody else, not him. And come to find out, Michael Jackson beat him out of all his shit. Michael Jackson beat the Beatles out of their catalog, so I'm not surprised. And you know, he sold Michael Jackson his shit for $1 million. Reminds me of Ali. When Ali was broke, Don King owed him all this money, and he was in the hospital. I think he got his jaw broke by Ken Norton, and Don King sent his son to the hospital with a brown paper bag, $25,000 in cash, and a piece of paper that says, "I don't owe you anything if you take this cash." And Ali said, "Man, I didn't have any money, so I signed it." So here we are. This is what happens to a lot of these great entertainers. George Clinton is still fighting to get his stuff back, and you know, Sly Stone. Man, I saw the documentary. This guy was phenomenal, Jim.
Well, I mean, there's no question he was the innovator, right? He was there in the 60s. He was the guy that integrated his band when the Black Panthers said, no, you need to get rid of the white guys out of your band. He said, there's no way. This is about the music, and we all love each other. So, you know, in the 60s, there weren't a lot of bands like that. Early 70s, it started like the Allman Brothers, a band from Macon, Georgia, where they're really from Florida, but they had a black drummer in the band. And the Great Little Feat back in the early 70s, got a guy from
Three Dog Night.
I'm sorry?
3 Dog Night.
But later in the 70s, the Rolling Stones worked with Peter Tosh and some of the Jamaican acts and did some of that stuff. But in the 60s, it was almost unheard of. So,
yes. Yeah, Allan.
I was going to mention that we had locally Rodriguez, if you remember the story of how for years he was a hero in South Africa for his songs, his sort of anti-authority songs.
I worked with his brother.
Oh, really?
I worked for Coleman Young.
Is that right?
Yeah, but he was a street guy. He was on drugs. He didn't know shit.
Yeah.
And he was they thought he was dead in South Africa, and somebody else was making money, just like the guy that wrote what is the song? The Lions in the Jungle.
Oh,
the Tokens.
Yeah, Solomon Linder died with $10 in his pocket, and Pete Seegers and all these people was making millions off of his song. Mm-hmm. And this musician, this white musician from England, got him his money. You know,
it's tragic.
Yes.
Sly should have been living in a palace and living a good life.
but he didn't care about the cash. It's like what's the artist, the graffiti artist out of New York?
Banky? Is it Banky or
No,
Banks? No,
what's his name? You
can't
know,
remember.
he died a heroin addict.
Oh, you're talking about the guy from Pittsburgh, actually. What's his name? What the heck?
I don't know.
Andy Warhol.
No,
No, I'm wrong
but he
again.
hung out with Andy Warhol.
And he wasn't really a
His
graffiti.
name John Basquiat. Basquiat.
There you go.
Yeah,
You don't like my music, so he's our historian here. So.
yeah, Basquiat. And yeah, they didn't care about making money, and you know they made music and stuff. And Sly finally did get rid of the white guys. He got rid of the black women. He got rid of his bandmates. He took drugs because he had anxiety attacks. You know, he had a problem doing live shows and shit. But you have to look at some of the list of bands that he produced at 19, 20 years old. The guy, the go-to guy, you know. And then you see him as he got old. He was he didn't age well.
And don't forget our good friend Henry stayed with him at his house for a few weeks there in Oak Park, was it? It's an interesting story that he worked with Sly and Dawn Silva, the Funk Queen. Interesting stories. There's interesting stories. If anybody gets a chance, the Funk Queen is an interesting book. So
Well, and I tell you, another giant died right along with him. The Beach Boys. I wish we all could be California. Yeah, well, damn, Brian Wilson.
yeah, as I said off camera here, I had the opportunity in 2013. I saw the Beach Boys like in the 80s or something, and somebody had given me tickets around 2013 to see Brian Wilson, and he had a tremendous band, Al Jardine, who was a singer in the Beach Boys, and David Marks and Blondie Chaplin, who were at one time or another part of the Beach Boys, and it was an amazing show. He was a little confused, but he was still pretty good.
I mean, some of the genius, you know, is borderline, you know, not insanity, but, you know, he had a lot of mental health issues. It's interesting. Today we had a lunch, a group of people formerly of the Detroit News. And one of the people I was sitting next to was Susan Whitehall, a music writer. And the flash came across about Brian Wilson. And she had a story that she was with Brian Wilson and they were at a hotel and he wanted to go upstairs to a bar, and she was worried, like, oh no, this is bad. But he went up there and they poured him 3 Cokes, and apparently there was stimulants he wasn't supposed to be having. He was very regimented in his diet and stuff. He went up and knocked down 3 Cokes. You know, he had life coaches. He had people watching him all the time, and he was innovative. He took chances. His albums evolved into different, you know, kinds of music. And the Beatles even talked about how they were so in awe of Brian Wilson. So
I think.
Well, I tell this story all the time. I grew up. Jackie Wilson used to come to our house out in Raleigh Township. The first fucking record 45 that I had, he gave it to me. It was Great Balls of Fire.
oh wow.
By Jerry E. Lewis. You know, yeah, he used to come to our house. I guess he liked, my mother said he liked some woman that lived down the street. He was a ladies' man.
Uh-huh.
He was a good looking guy. The Spinners lived in the township. You know, I remember doing Negro History Week when I was at Carver School. The Temptations come, you know. It's like people used to sing on the street corners. You know, you had all these groups and stuff. You remember Dennis Bowles, right?
Yeah.
His father played with the Funk Brothers.
Wow.
So they used to bring all the Motown acts to the township. So, you know.
And let's not forget when I stopped at your house at one time, and as I was leaving, Adolph yelled really loud, "There's a white boy in the neighborhood."
Listen, Lengel was different. Lengel was different. You know, Lengel was like he was one of those. I don't know. He wasn't really. He wasn't black or white. Michael Jackson wrote that song about Lengel.
And you don't like my music reference Phil Spector, who was a tortured soul, unfortunately.
Well, but it's Phil Spector. Listen, he knew talent, didn't he?
He did.
Oh man, and with his little crazy looking self, you know, it was like Berry Gordy. Berry Gordy knew talent, and sometimes he knew too much. And how many people did they fuck over?
Yeah, a lot, many.
They fucked over a lot of folks.
And Deborah's asking us to move on, so maybe we should move on from the music scene. I think Deborah.
Well, we are gonna go into the military, Deborah, but you know, but we just can't.
We can't.
Not say that the greatest, some of the two of the greatest songwriters in American history. We gotta mention them.
They were different. They weren't like the other musicians. Those two
guys.
If
this was a radio, we could play all their music and didn't have to worry about paying royalties.
Right.
Yeah, I would probably play half of the show. But anyway, let's move on. Man, sending in the Marines, unbelievable. Trump don't get it. The only time the Marines ever was sent to stop a so-called insurrection, whatever, in America was during just before the Civil War, when they went and captured John Brown because the army wasn't available, and Robert E. Lee, who was then part of the U.S. Military, he led the charge. And in 1968, when King was assassinated, D.C. they didn't have a National Guard. The Marine barracks there, they sent in the Marines to deal with the insurrection, riot, whatever you want to call it. Now, Trump sent in not only Marines, they was unprepared, had no place to sleep, had no provisions to, where they could eat, etc. And then he had the army, which, if you're going to send in the National Guard, you got to nationalize them over the objections of the governor. Presidents have done this before. Eisenhower did it to Little Rock in Arkansas, where the governor had to use the National Guard to prevent black students from going to Central High School. And then the next week, Eisenhower said, fuck that, I'll just nationalize, make them federal troops and send the same people back in there to protect the kids. So,
we got Kent, in Nixon in 1970, Kent State, the National Guard. It was not, I think, May of 1970. 4 people killed, 9 wounded. Look, you know what? There's a balancing act there between keeping the peace and taking lives to keep the peace. And there's, I think we've always tried in this country to err on the side of if it comes down to killing people, that we sort of back off a little bit. And the question becomes, really, I mean, the LA police chief, they were accused of not responding quick enough. He said we responded, I think he said 36 minutes to the very initial call. I don't know. I mean, to bring in the Marines and stuff like that, it starts to feel after a while when, I mean, I'm not against in some points, bringing in the military if you really, really have to, but it looks like, particularly the Marines, there's no business.
Well, do you know the mission of the Marine Corps?
No, well, I'm saying
when I say that, why you said that's like sending in the Navy. That's like sending in the Navy to California.
Right.
That's not their mission.
Right.
Trump, that tells you Trump don't have an understanding. But I'm not blaming Trump on this one. I'm blaming the assholes around him who none of them can tell him, man, there got to be somebody in the fucking room say, no, Mr. President, you go get mad at me. But they see how he operates. No, he gonna do what he's gonna do. All this shit is gonna backfire on him. And why you gonna send troops to kill Americans? Because sooner or later somebody gonna get killed.
It's a war. It's a war. It feels like a war on Americans. And interesting, this whole immigration thing. I think it's a false narrative when Republicans say, "Oh, the Democrats don't care about illegal immigration and stuff like that." Care about due process. And here it is. Trump was saying, "I want to take care of all the dangerous illegal immigrants who are here, who are posing a danger." Well, the theatrics aren't the numbers aren't there. So now they're going in, they took the 18-year-old student here in Southwest Detroit who was denied. He was trying to get to stay here, and he was denied it. But he wanted to finish high school. 18 years old from Columbia.
But I'm gonna do a but on this one.
Go ahead.
And I'm against ICE snatching people off the street and all this other shit. But these folks come over here and they don't become citizens, and they've been here since third grade, since they 5 years old, since they 6 months old. So what stops them from not doing it the right way? You hear and you should do it. And I read the stories of them snatching somebody, they in college, and then they said, "Oh, you're not a citizen." Well, I've been here since a baby, but my parents I was never a citizen. Listen, in this country, it's always a cycle where the government say, well, immigration has always been a political issue. Somebody always said we need to close the borders. We need to stop them from coming in, even though the people that's yelling at their parents or their grandparents came over the same fucking way. But that's the way people operate. But yet, listen, if you hear on a student visa, and it sounds trivia that, okay, I came here on a student visa and I didn't renew it. And so I've been here 3 years, and I've been a good person, making money, paying my taxes, doing all the stuff you're supposed to do. But when they start cracking down on this shit, they get you on a technicality.
Well, you want to take a break?
Let me say,
you want to talk to our friends?
Let me say something, Jim. Let me say something.
Quick.
When some of these people are around for a while and they're here, and then the idea of going to authorities and then trying to, with the big question mark whether they're going to be able to stay or not, they take the risk and they see that it's not. I'm not saying right or wrong, but they're here. They don't want to deal. They don't want to. They're afraid.
Yeah, but they're gonna have to deal with it. We're gonna take a break, and when we come back, Jim, why don't you go and acknowledge some of the people that's listening to us, and then we continue the conversation with Allan, Lengel, Deadline Detroit, Jim Nardone, our resident Fuzz the Buzz guy, and we'll be back. I'm Adolph Mongo.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. Are you living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, or maybe you know someone who's in the same situation? The probate process may be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. We have several nonprofit partners who have free attorneys who can assist you. Contact our office, 313-224-5990. or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. Don't lose your family property. Some of these properties have been in the family for 4 or 5 generations. Contact us now. We're here to help.
Okay, we're back. Jim, why don't you acknowledge some of the people that's listening to us?
First, thank everybody for weighing in. I want to say hello to all our friends, and I want to weigh in a little bit on your conversation. Eric Brown, Deborah Harris, Miss Sheila, thank you for your comment. You don't like my music. ICE is arresting people at their court hearings, so they stop trying to become legalized. Interesting. Miss Sheila says, thanks for sharing real life situation ships. Joe Cool. Hey, Joe Cool. Amanda Tibble. I know you guys are a little older than me. Yes, we probably are a lot older than you, Amanda. What are they going to do now? Hey, Sam. Hello, Sam. Candace McCrae. Hazel Park take Taekwondo. I wish they would have had this energy during the election. Deborah Harris. Democrats not enforcing the law on how to become a U.S. citizen. I think that may be true also. And Eric says the path to citizenship is available. People choose to ignore it. Well, you know, like everything else, Eric, people just put stuff aside because they're busy doing other stuff. I'm not making excuses, but we all do that, right? We all procrastinate.
But we shouldn't be kidnapping people and sending them to forcing other countries to take folks that, you know, somebody get picked up, don't even speak Spanish. They look Spanish. Their background is Spanish, but they dump you in El Salvador, a fucking hellhole, and the president there gonna throw you in jail. So it's just
good evening. I'm sorry. Good evening to Angela. And you don't like my music, saying the police have been using snatch squads since Seattle. Undocumented doesn't equate to illegal. Joe Cool, thank you. Cynthia Burnett. You're right on, Cynthia. He didn't do anything to the insurrectionists, which kind of puts him in a pretty bad position today.
Yeah.
Karen Winston, our old friend Karen, not old friend, our good friend Karen Winston, causing civil unrest. Edward A. Adolph, you're a walking encyclopedia. I still don't believe that story, but I had to look it up. Every time he tells a story, I have to look it up. I'll save you all the time. If he said it, it's probably true.
Yeah, and you wanted, and then I'll go to you, Allan. Jim, you wanted to make a comment?
I just wanted to weigh in a little bit on the conversation. I, too, like most of our viewers, believe that the U.S. Marines is overstepping his bounds, and you don't set up your U.S. military to kill your own citizens. That's not even conceivable to me, right? That's out of his mind. And I know we have to look at who the president is. He's doing it for the effect. But here's what I think. Here's what else I think he's doing. Whether we agree with it or don't agree with it, I think he's drawing a contrast to 2020. And his position is it's not going to be like Atlanta, Charlotte, Chicago, Portland, etc. When protesters caused $2 billion worth of damage. Well, $2 billion worth of damage, according to sources, January 6th, $3 million at the Capitol. I don't know how they got to 2.7 billion, but I think he's drawing a contrast in his leadership. And I think that's where he's drawing some support. And I think we're blind if we don't recognize that there's a lot of people that believe he's doing the right thing. Whether we agree with it or whoever agrees with it or not, I think the contrast is strong. And I think that it makes people like Gavin Newsom and Joe Biden and the former Vice President Harris, it makes them look weak.
Yeah, well, Allan, go ahead.
You know, I think, you know, look, if the fact that less people are coming over the border illegally, I said, you know, who's against that? You know, but the problem is that the administration overplays its hand. It says it's going after, first of all, the primary goal was to go after, you know, criminals who are here illegally. And now, you know, the numbers aren't there. They haven't been able to do it. So now they're taking away, they're creating, they're taking away working papers that were granted legally to immigrants who are here working. and they're taking those away, and so they can get the numbers up. It's theatrics. You saw today they were chasing undocumented workers through strawberry fields. I promise you, there's not going to be a lineup the next day of people wanting those jobs picking strawberries. I just think that, the theatrics are, what Trump, some of the concepts are good, but he overdoes it. He overplays it, and he doesn't care. It's all about image and theatrics and stuff. I think Carl Malinga had a great idea, and I wish they would consider this, is taking 7,000 or 8,000 judges from around the country, some retired and whatever, and start processing these people through courts, through the immigration courts, and lightening the dockets and getting things in order.
That's interesting. I saw the judge on Monday. So
oh yeah,
I did.
Yeah. Well, and both of y'all are right. What the problem is when you start snatching folks that shouldn't be snatched, that you start profiling people because they don't look the part, and then you got listen, all these countries that he says you can't go to. Haiti doesn't have a government. We made sure. So nobody's going to Haiti. So why are you putting Haiti on the list of not to travel? Because nobody's going there. Yemen is in the midst of a civil war. Why are you going to Yemen? Chad is in the midst of a drought and all kind of other shit. I'm looking at, the whole point is half of the shit, nobody's going, but countries like the Congo, how we get our cell phones and all the other shit, we still doing business with these folks.
But I think the idea is they don't want anybody from those countries coming to us.
Right. I understand what he's doing. Well, we wasn't getting them anyway. It's like in the Clinton administration, they took all the Cubans. They get here, and we let them come. The Haitians, we sent them back. Clinton was good at sending the Haitians back, and that Coast Guard sent them back. They both running from terror. They both running the make to get a better life. You go to Miami, they put the Haitians, they call it little Hades, in a little area, boxed up area, and say forget about them. But guess what? Now that most of the property where the condos are falling apart, little Hades got the best land. Now the government won't, can you sell it? You need to move out. Listen, man, it's just some bullshit, and those same people. I had a debate with folks in West Palm Beach that come from the Bahamas, Jamaica, and they talk all this pie in the sky. Oi, I'm here. The Black Americans, y'all, you're not doing this and that. I said, why the fuck are you here if Jamaica's all that? If Haiti's all that? You come here and you want to be here, but then you buy into that shit that, people, that right-wing bullshit. Kwame Kilpatrick, I asked, why don't you know how we make Detroit grow? Let's get some of those folks that's fleeing these countries and bring them here.
Absolutely.
We're not bringing nobody here.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to say that, what you can ignore and say this isn't about jobs. It's about black and white, right and wrong, or whatever. There are, and I was listening to a broadcast this morning on public radio, which hopefully will still be around. And they were saying there's about over 1 million people of undocumented workers just in the housing construction industry. We have, they're saying we're behind in our housing stock. That, people are afraid to show up to work now. And that's just the housing industry. Then we have, Kid Rock has a restaurant. He's a partner in a restaurant down in Nashville where they raided the restaurant.
Hypocrite.
Yeah, they were legal. And he says, "Oh, I'm not a daily, I'm not the operational guy daily, but I'm against it." So it's about, there's a balancing act. If you want to slowly get this going and then figure out ways to give some path of citizenship or legality to people being here where they can apply or come, in the end, look, we're going to have to do what other countries do, like in the Middle East, a lot of the United Arab Emirates and stuff like that. They import workers from all around the world. Israel, some of the hostages that were taken were from Thailand and stuff, working agriculture and stuff like that. We're going to have to bring in people because people don't want to do some of the jobs, the house cleaning, the hotels,
Allan, we send mixed messages. We accept non-citizens in the military, and we have forever.
Right.
And we have deported veterans, people that served in Vietnam, people who father died in Vietnam or Korea or whatever, or how we treated the Filipinos during World War II as they fought and they was part of they was colonized by the U.S. But after the war, the government wouldn't even get them veteran benefits. So we have stiffed a lot of folks, and it's not right. But if you're here on a student visa and you didn't go back or you didn't get it renewed, and you've been here for 3 years, you did your stay, and they catch up with you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You're gonna go back somewhere that you don't want to be. You got to do it right. But that doesn't make it right.
The Egyptian guy in Boulder, Colorado, he had an expired visa that expired in 2023. Look, there's arguments, certainly. I mean, you see something like that and you say, okay, here's an example of why we have to be, stricter about people's expiration.
Yeah, but then they go take his whole family, his 5 kids and his wife, and say, all y'all got to go. I think that's not right.
How about Derek? Derek makes the point. Has anybody arrested any of the employers? Thank you, Derek, for participating.
Right.
There's a couple of other ones. Jill Sheridan, thanks, Jill. She's right. That sounds right, that there was more money for immigration judges and the IRS, but it wouldn't surprise me if Donald Trump cut the funding. And Ira Todd, just quickly, if Ira Todd was in LA, we wouldn't have a problem. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, when I was on strike at the Detroit News, they had undocumented workers. We were on strike. They had scabs or whatever. You were using undocumented workers in the Sterling Heights plant. I called, because I had covered federal law enforcement. I called the head of immigration, INS, here in Detroit, and I told her, I said, you need to go out there. We've got good information that there are undocumented workers. And she said, I don't want to get involved.
Well, you can talk to all your friends at the FBI. I mean, they could probably fix things, but I'm going with Ira Todd myself. Sorry, that's just me. I'm going for the real city.
I'm just saying, the politics of immigration is nothing new. And like I say, we
during the 50s, Eisenhower sent over 100,000 Mexican workers and citizens back to Mexico. And some of these folks was born in the U.S. during World War II. Earl Warren, who's probably was one of the most liberal Supreme Court justices in the history of the Supreme Court, signed an order saying, let's put Japanese Americans in internment camps and confiscate their property. Listen, we have been paranoid, etc. Trump, well, he got people telling him, well, we need to go back to the days where Native Americans was born in this country 500 years ago, but it took the 1920s to make them U.S. citizens, which is some bullshit. You know, I just didn't get it, and I found out something new, that we made American Samoa our territory since the 1900s. They're not American citizens. They
I didn't know
are
that.
permanent citizens, but they're not American citizens, and the majority of Samoans don't want to be American citizens because of the property rights and all this other stuff, but they are permanent residents of the U.S.
All right. Is it still going to tip over? Are we still worried about it tipping over? And thanks, Terry McCrimmon. We thought we lost you. We're glad to see you tonight. Go ahead,
I just
Allan.
want to say I have friends who are immigrants who have eventually gotten their citizenship, and I can tell you that they've had to renew their green cards and all that kind of stuff. They've hired lawyers. It has cost them thousands of dollars, and that's another issue there as well. There may be some free legal aid, but a lot of people can't afford to really even deal with the whole process. So,
well, you know what? I had a professor from Jamaica when I was at the University of Michigan, and we was pretty tight. We go, I'm kissing up to the professor. I see him at the bar, buy him a drink and shit, and he was married like two or three times and shit. We get to talking. I said, hey, why you get married so many times or whatever? First thing he said, the green card, man. The green card.
Yeah.
He said, I got married the first time for the green card.
It's green card marriages everywhere. Yeah. I have a friend who just married. He married an Israeli woman, and they've asked for letters of recommendation where we have to say, yes, I know that they're married. I know that they live together, cohabitate. There's some, once you get in there.
I got a video of them making sure.
Calculating, right.
Yeah.
I mean, once you get into the system, I mean, there are a lot of hurdles there, and it is a tough system. And that's, some people don't want to, they can't afford it. They don't have the knowledge or whatever. It's not sometimes that people are like, I don't have time to do it or whatever.
Well, I feel for folks. I feel for folks that are trying to become citizens and shit, but you go overseas though. In some of these countries, all you have to do is write a check, you become a citizen.
Right.
So what do you guys think about Candace's position? And thank you, like my music. He made a comment earlier about conventional wisdom and the political winds, and they're not always right. And thank you for that. Candace says it's a cheap version of slavery. We allow them to come here, pay them for their cheap labor, and send them back when they help fix up neighborhoods and industries, making way for Americans, I guess. What do you guys think about that position?
I have a friend who worked in the lumber industry in Northwest, working for some of the warehouse or whatever, and they subcontracted out. These guys would hire undocumented workers. They put them up in huts or whatever, and they were supposed to pay them at the end of like 2 or 3 months. They would call immigration right before they had to pay them. They would.
Yeah, that's what they used to do to black workers. Black workers used to do all the manual labor, all the shit, and then the Mexicans came and took over the shit. The landscaping, and you go to Florida and you see who are the people that's doing all the landscaping in these places. It's Mexicans or Latinos or whatever, and it's 95 degrees outside, and they out there, cutting the grass and all this shit. And you tell me that I'm not doing it. It's just like the Irish used to control boxing. Then it's the blacks, and then the Jews. And it was always a group that was willing to take the brunt of doing all the dirty work.
So what about like my music talks about his stepbrothers in Ontario's apple orchard. What about up at Mackinac Island? Where are the people at Mackinac Island? They're all Jamaican too, aren't they? Quite a few of them.
Yeah, they talked about the Jamaicans in Traverse City It was like a fucking plantation.
How about the Legs Inn? They bring people in from Poland. Has anybody been to the Legs Inn up near Harbor Springs? The Polish restaurant where they
go to Hong Kong, and you see all the Filipinos that at work as domestic workers, maids, babysitters, and all that, and they gather during the weekend to have a little picnics. I mean, thousands of them, and they treat them like dirt. The same way that a lot of Filipinos and Indians go to these Middle Eastern countries. The employer take their fucking passport and piss on them or abuse them or do whatever the fuck they're going to do.
Look, I think it's in Qatar or one of those countries, one of these very wealthy countries. They bring in foreigners who were washing windows of skyscrapers. They were falling, and they didn't have safety precautions. They were dying all the time, falling down, and they couldn't give a shit.
Well, you go to Panama, and thousands of people died building the Panama Canal, and you look at the population of Panama, and you see ascetic Jews, you see Asians, you see black people, you see all kind of people, because they came there at the turn of the century building a canal, and they stayed there. But a lot of folks, cheap labor, that at the work didn't kill you, the mosquitoes got you. Malaria killed you. And so Dominican Republic, a good example of they want to come here and they want to be Americans, etc. But yet they treat the Haitians, who some of them, thousands of them, been in the Dominican Republic all their life, do all the dirty work. And now they saying we kicking all these fuckers out because we don't want them. They're not citizens, even though they half of them was born in the Dominican Republic. But it's like, you're right. We had somebody say it's like slavery. Yeah, in places it is like slavery.
How about G Money? I'm sorry, Adolph. Go ahead. I thought you were done. G Money Hollywood talks about the disparity and the time it takes people from different backgrounds, different countries to get their green card, maybe 36 months from the UK, Japan, Germany. But it takes people from Asia to Africa a minimum of 10 years. Why are their paths shorter? That's interesting. Jill said she wanted to go there. Heard that drive up is nice. I think she's talking about the Legs Inn. It's beautiful. Don't let Henry pick the restaurant. Sorry.
But you know what? You go to Japan, they don't want folks. It's hard to become a citizen of Japan. They don't want anybody different, even though their birth rate is like they don't have one. All as a country of old people. So I'm telling you, these other countries make it tough to become. Some of them make it tough to become a citizen. Some of them you can pay. And U.S. we got Trump and them don't even know the history when they piss on fucking France. Oh, France, fuck them. They give them back the Statue of fucking Liberty and all other shit that these countries contribute to America.
I want to go back to Allan for just a minute, if I could. Mr. Duckett says the point of all this is cruelty and not law and order. So I think you pointed it out that it's, I guess, political theater. It's just theater, whatever it is that Trump's doing. I guess my question to both of you is, he's gotten away with it on tariffs. He's gotten away with it so far on this. At some point, this is going to blow up in his face. When is it going to happen? I guess.
Yeah, well, but it's going to blow up. It's going to blow up. We're going to take a break because we're going to blow up if we don't take a break. Allan Lengel, Jim Nardone, I'm Adolph Mongo, and if you want to become part of the Detroit and Black and White family, what Vanessa say?
Subscribe, like, share.
Yes.
We appreciate all our friends. It makes the show great. I appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabria, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just that's a mixed bag.
So when does it? Go ahead, Allan.
No, when you ask when's it going to blow up, it's blowing up right now. And then we got, Trump is doing his birthday / celebration of 250th anniversary of the Army, where he's spending $45 million. There are protests, counter protests all around the country, including here in Detroit.
And then they name Trump. Listen, that defense secretary. So they got rid of the names of these. They think they slick. They go find names of military people that got similar names to Bragg and all these. It just, they the most petty piece of shit that I ever seen in my fucking life.
Racist.
Harvey Milk, you don't have to be gay. Harvey Milk was a decorated veteran in the Navy, gave his life as a government official in San Francisco, and they pissed on his memory. Oh, he gay. He DEI. These motherfuckers, most of them never went to Vietnam, never even went to the military, and yet they calling all the shots. And you erase somebody history and shit. Rosa Parks didn't exist. Jackie Robinson don't exist. All this shit is it's crazy, Allan.
No, I mean it's so insulting. It's really maybe some people might think this is an overstatement, but it's really a white supremacist idea that you come in, people are offended by. Look, in the North, people are offended by the Civil War, by the symbols left of the remnants of the Civil War that stand for slavery and all that. They go back and they rename, the Robert E. Lee and all that, people who fought to keep slavery, and they don't get it. They are like, fuck this, fuck DEI. That's what I say. The woke, to push back on woke is okay, but they overdo everything.
I'm woke, but I'm gonna tell you, as a kid, Allan, and when we used to walk in your neighborhoods, you see the little black jockeys. We used to knock their heads off of the little black jockeys because couldn't stand it.
We never had one in our house.
All I can say is I won't say who, but he was a state trooper sergeant. He had quite the collection.
And my parents used to say, "Don't get caught doing that." And I said, you see the little black man, but there's a story behind all that shit, because when the Kentucky Derby, all those races, it used to be the only jockeys were black until they started making money, and then they flipped the switch. But the bottom line is, we had to see those symbols all the fucking time. You didn't get the no blacks allowed, and you can't do that. It was just an unwritten rule. Yeah. You couldn't go there. Swimming pool in Oak Park closed because they didn't want black kids to swim. We couldn't go to Ferndale because they didn't allow. They said you had to be a resident. We couldn't even go into Detroit because they said you had to be a resident. We had nothing. You just can imagine that, everybody slapping you around. You can't do this because you got to be a resident. But the South didn't have a monopoly on pissing on people. You know, this country has pissed on folks and shit.
2 quick questions. Who's going? Jill's asking the question, who's going to the No Kings demonstration? And Edward, thank you. As a Marine veteran himself, he's afraid for the current active duty Marines. And I have to tell all our friends out there, Edward included, that you're absolutely right on. They're in a no-win situation, the U.S. Marine Corps. And
right, that wasn't the
Defense.
mission. I was in the Marine Corps, and that's not the mission of the fucking Marine Corps. And they're gonna find themselves with some folks that's gonna mutiny on them because they're gonna refuse to do that. It's like doing the '67 riots or rebellion when they brought in the 101 Airborne to stop the violence in Detroit. And there was times when the Army, African American soldiers, had to threaten to shoot the Detroit police that was going into the community, saying, listen, man, you just can't beat up people and do all this shit, because some of these guys was coming home or they was from areas just like Detroit. So you sending in Marines and the National Guard, especially the National Guard, most of them are from California. Probably a large portion of them coming from LA and that area. You think they're gonna want to kill their neighbors and shit?
that's ridiculous.
No, it's not.
Thanks, Edward. Thanks, Edward, for your point. You're absolutely right on. Thanks again. Joe Cool, he's talking about Steve Miller. I want to talk about Pete Hegseth. I can tell you this. You know, I wouldn't say I hired a lot of cops, maybe 10 or 15 or 20 or 30, not that many. But I can tell you this, Pete Hegseth would not have made it through the first interview with me. That guy is out of his mind. He's an alcoholic. He would not be a rookie cop in Michigan. I don't get this.
Well, I wouldn't hire him for a manager at McDonald's. I mean, come on, you know. He's he's got a record. He's got a record. I mean, he was the head of foundations, which they went to hell.
Where's the former vice president at?
Are you talking about
which one? The one in California?
Yeah. And listen, you would think, God, she went and she's hiding under a rock. You know, she's hiding under a rock. Right. You know, I see the governor standing alone, him and the mayor, and you know, it seemed like, damn, he want to occupy California. California been occupied several times. The Russians was in California. Well, it was a part of Mexico forever. And here we are, you know.
Karen remembers the Army tanks going down Davison Street. She's not talking about the freeway. I think she's.
But I remember tanks going down 8 Mile Road when it was just a 2-lane highway, so to speak, and you can see the tanks and shit because the National Guard Armory was by the Allan Lengel motel, the West Side Drive-In.
and the National Guard probably caused more problems in Detroit in '67.
There's no question about it. Well, we are what we are, and it's shit. There's deja vu all over again. You know,
history repeats itself. It's cyclical in this country when we think things can't happen again. I mean, we look back at the McCarthy era and we go, well, thank God that can never happen again. Well,
but it happens. You know, they didn't think that the riots of '43 was going to happen. 20 years later, it's happened.
Right.
Shit. Yeah, so it happens. You know, people live through it and etc.
And Derek's referring to the Algiers motel incident. I think the National Guard were a big part of that. They were looking for snipers, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but the police, you know, they the one the trigger happy guys, and and you have to read the autopsy reports of what they did to those 3 young men.
Young men.
Because they got made a mistake and got caught with some white
The wrong
prostitutes.
women.
Well,
Yeah.
look, during the riots, I mean, it was an opportunity for a lot of police officers to seek vengeance against people in the neighborhood who were giving them trouble.
But they was already kicking people ass. But what they didn't
they
expect,
murdered people.
what they didn't expect that night when they went and into the Blind Pig, that most of the people in there was Vietnam veterans that came home, and they said, fuck this, I'm not taking no shit. I'm not dealing with this shit. You know, so it was a different kind of rider that they had to deal with.
Sure. I mean, the city at the time had a lot. My father had a bar at Grand River and 14th Street, and right next door was a shoe shine that was a Blind Pig. We used to go in there to get our shoe shine, and my father would give a tip, and he'd always say, "Here, buy everyone a drink," and then he'd go, "At my place." You know, Blind Pigs were, but it was. Look, in June, you remember Ruth English, one of our classmates. She told me in June of '67, she said, "You better tell your people there's going to be trouble this summer." I mean,
it didn't take a genius.
It was happening. Well, it was blowing up all around the country.
It was blowing up. Ruth English,
Watts, Newark. You know.
Wasn't one of those Miss Cleo people. You know, yeah. May she rest her soul. She's no longer with. Yes.
I liked Ruth. She had a spirit.
I like Ruth too.
She had a good spirit about
Ruth didn't play around, you know.
Yeah.
Ruth English. They called her Lady Gale.
Thank you, Mr. Duckett. Thanks, Joe, for weighing in. Joe Cool and our friend Ira.
Yeah, and I just want to say before we get off the air that my good friend, a guy that I grew up with and you went to school with, Allan Lengel, Frank Leslie Miles Jr. His services is next week, June 20th. That's the viewing at Kemp Funeral Home in Southfield. His funeral is the 21st at 10 a.m. Starts at 10 a.m. at New Mount Vernon Church, 21009 Ithaca Avenue in Royal Oak Township. Frank Miles was a guy that that was my guy. You know, we was on the track team, football team. Lost his son. His son was at Redford High School. Going to football practice, standing outside the bus stop. Some students got into it on the bus, started shooting at each other, and they killed Frank's son, Frank the Third. And I was watching TV. I was watching the news. Mm-hmm. It came on, and when they said the name, I said, "Man, it's like." You know, it was unbelievable. I just got in my car, went over to his house, and man, listen, Frank gonna be missed. And you know, and he worked hard to deal with the violence against young people and stuff. He was a good speaker. So yes.
Yeah, good guy. We had him on the show. He came.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and died the day after his birthday. I guess that's the way to go if you're gonna go.
Right.
You know, we all gonna face the music. Jim, your final thought.
I just want to thank everybody for participating tonight. It was a good show, and it was a good show because of their participation and their thoughts. And I learned quite a bit tonight. Thanks.
Allan Lengel.
I'll say, if anybody, Saturday is No King's Day. It's sort of the counter protest to the big parade in D.C. And if anybody wants to know locations, you go to Deadline Detroit. There's a list of different places where, including Clark Park, Ferndale, Troy, the Lansing State Capitol. And there'll be protests all around the country. So
And Karen Winston said they were still finishing the Davidson Freeway in 1967, and that's the first one of the first freeways in America. And you see how you can go down Davidson, and the lodge stops, and then you're in a neighborhood. They wanted to tear that whole neighborhood up, and the people over there uh, fought hard, said no. So they had to go a mile or two down and start the freeway again. You know, Detroit, that made it easy for people to move out. So we can continue this conversation on Friday. We're gonna have the new chief of public relations for the police department. She's gonna come on Friday evening and talk about some of the programs that Chief Madison is implementing, and she came from Channel 7. And man, what happened to all the reporters? They go into the sheriff's department, Figer's office, the police department.
Detroit in black and white.
Yeah, they not making money, man. Allan.
I think people are getting buyouts or whatever, and then plus they're pushing. Some people aren't getting their contracts renewed because they too much experience. They're getting paid too much. If you watch the TV stations now, sometimes it looks like you're watching Lansing TV, or smaller market. That these people are probably getting paid half of what, and probably not even half, even less than half.
Well, they making they making minimum wage.
Well, it's a good start. I mean, look, Detroit has always been a major market, and for you to come in at a major market, you're going to be like, yeah, I'll take 30 grand for the experience, and then hopefully maybe I'll get to the network where I can make a little more money.
Yeah, no, maybe I'll take 25 to the major network. Yeah. But sure. Anyway, somebody said this was a good old boy hour tonight, and they like it.
Okay. We loved having him. He's great. He's a great participant.
Okay, we'll see you Friday, and we'll be back. This is Adolph Mongo. Thank you, Jim Nardone, Allan Lengel. Thanks all the folks that contribute to this show. We couldn't do it without you. And Vanessa, get well soon. Teresa, thank you, Teresa. One day we're gonna have Teresa. She's like that character on what's that? What was that show you never saw the man?
With the fence.
Home Improvement.
Home Improvement, right? You see
that? Yeah.
We'll have her wear a mask, or at least a cover, a face cover.
No problem. So, and thank you very much. And listen, this show we really be fucked if we didn't have her or Jim on Saturdays and stuff. So I thank you. See you Friday.